Hello and welcome to this week's episode of The Giant Pod with me, Andy Wrintmore. This week, I am talking to Steve Swales. He was the principal sculptor for Madame Tussauds for 30 years and was responsible for many waxworks all over the world from all the different Madame Tussauds attractions, exhibitions, whatever you want to call them. We talk about his beginnings of sculpting and his beginnings with art, his upbringing. We talk about how he got into Madame Tussauds. We talk about the history of Madame Tussauds. We talk about hanging out with Fidel Castro and doing a waxwork of him. I think we talk about Beyonce. He did Beyonce. We definitely talk about when he did the Sculptor for Queen Elizabeth II. We talk about how he almost broke the fingers of the Queen of Denmark. That's an interesting story. And many other things. Great chat, great guy. When you're in a room with someone who's arguably the greatest of all time at what they do, and I think he wouldn't say it, but I do think you can argue that Steve Swales is the greatest waxwork sculptor for Madame Tussauds, and they're really the only ones that do what they do. You expect some ego, and there was none. Just the loveliest guy. We had a great chat. Really enjoyed his company, and I think you guys are going to enjoy this one. I was really pumped to do this podcast, and we definitely got the goods. And like a lot of podcasts, as soon as the mics turned off, a whole other podcast happened as well with some of the other stories that maybe he didn't want to air. But it was just such a great hangout. So here it is. This is The Giant Pod. I'm Andy Wrintmore, talking to Steve Swales. Enjoy it. Here it is. Everything's cool, and I got ADHD, so I'm a bit of a fidget myself.
I haven't got the H, I've got the other bits.
The ADD.
Yeah, there is on the internet somewhere, and I meant to tell you, the Times did a sort of a double-page spread. Did you see it at all?
Sarah sent it to me.
Oh, she did?
Shout out, Sarah. Your lovely daughter. Your talented daughter, for hooking this up. So I had Chris Bailey in, who's a photographer.
Yeah.
And we had a great chat. And then he said, and we were talking about Froome's networks and just how many people there are in Froome who've done like amazing or incredible jobs or do incredible jobs. And he said, oh, my friend Sarah's, her dad's the lead, the main man.
That was years ago.
Yeah. So you retired now?
Yeah.
Wow.
I was there for 30 years.
How would you sum all that? How would you sum that up?
What, the 30 years?
Yeah.
So much learning. You never stop learning.
Yeah.
In a job like that. I'm a curious person. So also I was a principal sculptor, and then I became technical director. So finding ways of doing things more efficiently, doing sit-ins and things. So you didn't have to measure every little eyelash and things. So
right.
I was working out camera angles, lighting, all that sort of thing. But I did really enjoy travelling and doing sit-ins.
So what sort of places have you...
Well, I went all up the east coast of Australia doing sit-ins.
Wow.
With the Prime Minister, sort of runners, swimmers, basketball players, motorbike world champions, and I've been to America loads of times.
Yeah.
The first time I went actually was a sitting with Aretha Franklin in her house in Detroit.
That's amazing, because she was a bit of a hermit, wasn't she, for many years?
Yeah, well, this would have been about 30 years ago, just over. And that was... to stand next to someone who's singing with just an amazing voice.
Yeah.
It's, that you'll never forget that. The same thing happened with Stevie Wonder. He came to London and he was singing.
Yeah.
And I suppose I'm not used to hearing voices that good.
Yeah.
And when I left, I said, "Oh, I've got to go now." And he answered me in this sort of strange voice. And I just stopped like that. And he was taking when I get nervous, I can do a bit, because I was brought up in London till 8.
Yeah.
I go back into that slight southeast London accent. And he was coming back at me with my voice. It was incredible.
I suppose he gets, because that's all he can rely on is his ears.
Yeah.
I guess you have the other senses as well, but principally probably his ears are what gets him by. You do pick up on voices, I guess, and the nuance of accents.
Yeah, it was amazing, yeah.
So were you in Stevie Wonder's house?
No. I went into Aretha Franklin's house.
Right.
And then I went on to Malibu to Brian Wilson in his house.
Lovely.
And it was the time of Eugene Landy.
Right.
So there's lots of films and things about that relationship.
Yeah.
And that was absolutely fascinating. He then came to London as well, so
So he kind of, you went to him and did a little bit, and then what happens? They come to London for the unveil, or
he came. I think he was to have his hands printed or something.
I see. Yeah.
I can't remember exactly, but it was very interesting.
Which what year was this?
Crumbs. That would be about, I should think, 1988,
right.
87, something like that.
Because he had a bit of trouble, didn't he, in the 80s?
Yeah,
I think it was the 80s. I'm not sure which era it was, but there was a period of time where he wasn't quite himself. He wasn't very well, was he?
I did a pose of him,
right,
with him sitting in a chair, and I put some card down and marked round his feet.
Yeah,
and then he sort of panicked because he thought I trapped him in that.
Really?
Yeah. And he was, he was being given loads of drugs and things by this Dr. Landy.
Right.
But my friend actually helped me do the sit-in, who lived nearby in Ventura, who was a Navy pilot, American Navy pilot. He came out and he said, "That guy ain't rowing with both oars in the water." But, I think he's doing so much better now.
I did see something. Actually, I saw something. I think it was last night on Instagram, and he'd posted like a message to his fans saying, "Hi, I hope everyone's okay. I'm doing better than I've done for quite a while, and I feel great." And I thought, well, that's wholesome. Well,
yeah,
that was a nice wholesome thing. And everyone's in there like, "Oh, get well soon, Brian. We love you. Great to hear it."
Yeah. I think he had a very hard upbringing and.
A lot of these very, very famous people did, I think. And I think that's part of why they end up famous, is they find a drive somewhere. I mean, that's something you've probably had more experience with the rich and the famous than a lot of people. You've been very intimate with them when you've had to measure them.
Yeah.
Is there a common theme with these people?
It's difficult. I've done lots of sit-ins in Holland because we originally had an attraction there. And that was, now I think they're all over the world. I forget how many there are. But Dutch people, on the whole, are just really nice.
Yeah.
I've found Americans to be either slightly off the wall or very professional and want to get the job done.
Right.
Do
who's someone that you've gone to do a sitting with, and instead of it being like a fun honour, it's been like straight down the middle, like this is just another, entry in the itinerary?
Yeah, I think probably more likely, because we were starting an attraction in New York, I would say that a lot of the American... most of them are really nice, really friendly. But occasionally you got someone who'd been more or less told by their publicity people, you should be in this, and they haven't got that sense of the history
right
that a lot of British people had for Madame Tussauds.
Because we always assume everyone knows about it, it's world famous.
Yeah.
But it wasn't always that, was it? It was always a very London-centric thing. I mean, I know she came from France originally, and I would like to talk about some of the history. And she did travel around Scotland and other places.
She went to Limerick, where my wife comes from.
Really?
Yeah.
But I guess in the international scene, until the ones in America started opening up, or
because I've been to Hong Kong loads of times, and we've got one there. And, you know, I did sitting with Jackie Chan, and then again in London.
I love
and
Jackie
he was just such a wonderful person.
Yeah.
You know, and you do get, I think it's more like the news presenters, media people, they can be just sort of, okay, you know, let's get on with this. And, you know, some people can be slightly awkward.
Right.
But I can't talk about that.
Do you, I mean, when I first started talking to your daughter about, you know, possibly getting you on here, she did say, oh, there are NDAs that he's not allowed to discuss. But then she sent me this whole list of people. He's happy to talk about these people. And it was like, oh, screw the NDAs. Like, there's enough in here for 3 hours, probably. Desmond Tutu, Fidel Castro. I saw a picture of you with Fidel Castro, and I don't know whether it was actually with the sculpture or you with the real him.
Oh, well, I went with the photographer.
Right.
Went to Cuba.
Yeah.
And we were sort of met by a minister or something or other and put up in a really nice hotel, and then had to wait by a swimming pool for about 5 days to get the call to go and see him.
That's great.
And it was so fascinating because they sent a car, which was an old Lada that hardly worked, you know, and I was sitting in the back and the photographer was in the front seat by the driver. The windows wouldn't go down, wouldn't go up or down. They were just falling down and the smoke was pouring in. And we went up a little bit of a slope and had to get out and walk up. But it was, for me, one of the most fascinating sittings I'd ever had. You know, to be there with, like, there's a full colonel who moved the turntable round.
Yes, I read about this. His bodyguard or something.
Yeah, and you know, he had a gun here and he was moving it. And I said, would you be careful? Don't let him fall off, because I have one person an American, who will remain nameless,
right,
who just sort of leapt off him. And this chap looked at me and said, you know, he didn't say anything, but it was, I've saved this man from over 200 attempts on his life. And I don't think you're going to lose him now.
Yeah, on this on this spinning platform. Yeah. I was going to ask you about whether there was heightened security, whether Castro himself was slightly sort of paranoid or edgy around you, because that would have been a real ruse for assassination attempt, wouldn't it? We're here to take your measurements for Madame Tussauds or Tucson. It's two swords, isn't it? We discussed this when you came in. And then, you know, then you get him, I guess. That would have been a novel approach.
Well, apparently, I didn't get everything, you know, and I forgot to get his head measurement. And I asked this chap if we could go back. And he said, oh, yeah, well, Fidel wants to see you again. And we went out in the evening because we heard that he was too busy. And then we came back. The photographer had a bit of poisoning from the fish, and he came back, wasn't feeling well. And they were waiting in the hotel. They'd been searching all the clubs in Havana, looking for us. It was the day before we were going.
Wow!
And they put us in a car and shot us over to this, like a great big Russian place, and we disappeared underground.
Right.
You know, and went through all this incredible security. And then I think it was about 1 a.m. we got there, and he was in his office with all these people And he was supposed to be writing a speech, and he only had 3 minutes, and he normally takes 6 hours. So I think it took him days to cut the speech down. But he gave me a bottle of rum, which we've still got, and a
Nice.
big bunch of flowers for my wife. And he was so avuncular, you know, he asking questions about the business, really, you know,
Yeah.
because it was a family business.
Right.
And I was talking about publicity department, you know, all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I think the first time I was with him for about 3 hours, and he was standing with his arm round me shoulders,
Yeah.
really sort of absolutely lovely.
Yeah.
But it went really calm and quiet. Someone handed him a paper, and he said, and he looked at it, and it was, you know, like the whole atmosphere changed. And it's like talking to him, but he was using an interpreter,
Right.
but you don't notice,
Yeah.
you know. And he said, "You wouldn't like my job."
Right.
And then he put his initials on this piece of paper.
Yeah.
And so my mind was thinking, is it a death warrant?
Yeah.
Do you know, like it's...
Yeah. What is that he's doing there?
And he just,
His demeanor changed.
yeah.
Wow. And do you feel like he, you know, it's that old saying, isn't it? Is that heavy is the head that wears the crown?
Yeah.
Do you definitely get that vibe from him?
I think so. I mean, it's such a difficult,
So a difficult read, I guess, isn't it?
yeah, sort of to slightly change the subject.
Yeah. Yeah.
I worked in New York for a couple of weeks to set up the attraction there, and we'd sculpted, someone had done a sit-in with Donald Trump,
Right.
and it was sculpted, and I was there, and it didn't look great. Do you know,
Right.
it was just a wax head, and
Was this while he was president?
no, this was a long time ago. We also did a sit-in with his ex-wife as well.
Right. Oh.
Ivana.
Right.
Yeah. I said to my boss, she said, "Can you take this to Trump Tower and work on it to, you know, try and improve it?"
Yeah.
And I looked at it and I said, "It looks like a pig." I'm not taking that, you know.
Right.
And anyway, she took it. And I said, when she came back, I said, "What did he say?" And she said, "He said, if I look like that, I wouldn't have a social life." I said, "I bet if he didn't have any money, he wouldn't have a social life."
Yeah, no, he's not a likable character, is he? I'm not a fan.
But I wished I'd gone now.
Right.
Do you know that? Because
Because now you'd have a story about him.
yeah, but it's not just that. Do you know, like some people have this amazing charisma,
Yeah.
and you can't see it on, you know, on the television.
Right. This is what I was going to ask you about
Yeah.
Castro and these people that you've the politicians and the people you've been with, is the charisma thing. But that's slightly derailing the conversation. But yeah, I get what you're saying. You want to just see what he's about with your own two eyes.
Yeah, and because, you know, people have talked about Clinton has been incredibly charismatic.
Right.
And I've known people that have known Oswald Mosley,
Right.
and they've said he's the most charismatic man they've ever met in their lives.
Right.
And yet you see film or photographs, you don't get any of it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And so sometimes trying to sculpt charisma is not easy.
Right. Yeah, but that is fascinating in itself, because what you're doing is you're capturing the essence of someone, aren't you? And
Well,
it isn't.
you're trying to capture the essence.
And I tell you something, right? I started to do some. I've not been to Madame Tussauds. I'd like to go. Hint, hint. Wink, wink. But when I started researching, I thought, well, I better have an overview of the history of the place, of how it's moved with the times, the technology, etc. I was really pleased to see you popping up throughout some of these documentaries. It was really helpful. But I tell you what happened.
A young man.
Well, you don't look too much different here. You've got much longer hair. You've kept your thatch, that's for sure. You lucky man. You've got a full hair. I won't have that much hair at your age. I don't have that much hair now. Yeah. But one of the weird things that happened is I sat down, I was eating my food. I thought, right, I'll put this on. I like a good documentary anyway, so I was like, this is perfect. And one of the first shots was I guess it was one of the older mannequins. I think it's like maybe a French Revolution character.
Yeah.
And you know that term uncanny valley? You heard of that?
No.
It's where I'm really surprised you haven't heard of that. It's where something is so close to being human. It's so lifelike, yet it isn't human. So like robots that look really good and they put I'm sure that you know a bit about this.
I know.
Yeah. And
much to my chagrin.
The uncanny valley is a saying where it's like you see something and it's so real, it's so close to the real thing, yet there's something within you instinctually, maybe it's an evolutionary detector that knows that isn't real. It's not actually human. So it's missing a soul, I guess, and you can tell looking at it, and it makes you feel slightly uncomfortable inside because it's essentially something posing as one of your own.
Yeah.
And I tell you what, it put me off the food. It put me off my food. I was eating, and as soon as I saw these mannequins, I got this weird feeling in my stomach. I was like, ugh. And I don't know why, because I'm quite a rational person. I like to think I'm logical, rational, fairly intelligent. Yeah, I had a bit of an issue eating and watching some of these mannequins. It was just something.
I completely understand.
Something sat very strange with me, and then I can watch it without eating quite fine. But I think it was just that initial introduction to like, oh wow, these are really lifelike. And there's something in me that went like, oh, my brain kind of broke slightly.
I did a sculpture of Chiuna Fuji, who is you do quite well against him, I think. He's a sumo wrestler.
The sumo guy.
The wolf.
I saw this, and you had to get. You said that you couldn't look him in the eye.
Well,
because he had a gaze.
He was standing there, amazing clothes. Do you know these big ropes and things? His hairdresser came and did. They put, I think it's camellia oil or something in it, and did his hairstyle, and got him standing there. And I said to him, because I'd watched a bit, and it was my wife, Mel, that suggested we should do a sumo wrestler, because she'd been watching it on television. And they sort of look at each other like this before they start.
Right, they sort of have a stare down.
Yeah, and I said, can you look at me like that?
Yeah.
And he went like this, and I just...
Yeah.
There's so much power in those eyes.
Right.
And when I sculpted it, I got them slightly cross-eyed as well, which was... the trouble is often you don't notice, because you put the eyes in afterwards.
Right.
And you don't notice until you see a photograph and you go, oh, dear.
Oh, God.
Yeah. But I had that as well with, crumbs, what's she called? Susan Sarandon.
Okay.
Yeah. And in New York, Susan Sarandon came in for a sit-in, and I sat with her for about an hour or so while they did her makeup. She had a makeup artist and hair, and just really lovely, caring person. We had photographers, a photographer there who takes most of the photos, but I take photos at the same time as they go round, because of, trying to get the feel of someone. And she was a lovely person, but then her eyes came into the camera I was holding.
Right.
And then that was a shock.
Right.
There's something, and I wish I knew what it was.
Yeah.
And people say, oh, they're great with the camera, and you might not notice them in the street.
The camera loves them, yeah.
Yeah, but there is something that...
They say the eyes are the window to the soul, don't they? That's such a cliche old saying, but in your line of work, you You must have experienced that.
Yeah, well, I went with another sculptor up to Scotland to do a sitting with the Dalai Lama.
Wow.
That was fascinating in itself. And when we went, there was lots of security and things again because his life was in danger.
Really? What was the...
Well, the Chinese were trying to get him, I think.
Really?
Yeah.
When was this?
This was... Because he's left Tibet, and lives in northern India now. But he's, again, a really lovely person.
Yeah.
And you get a feeling from him. So he stood there and held our hands and things. And I didn't get a feeling of a man or a woman. Normally you'd know if someone was a man or a woman.
Oh.
But he's not effeminate. He's a man.
Yeah.
But there's something sort of different about him.
Okay.
And I saw these little bald patches on his head. And I said, are they shaved, They said, no, that's just natural. They're in the position of a thumb and fingers like that on his head.
Right.
When we went, it was May, but it was all snow. The road had just been cleared. And we went in, and the Buddhist nuns were saying that the spirits were excited that he was there.
Right.
And that's why it snowed, And it was a really difficult, really dingy day.
Yeah.
And they said, well, would you like to come in the evening to hear him talk? And he came, there was a great big tent, must be, easily 50 metres long. And he walked in with this bloke with a big sort of like helmet thing on.
Right.
And blowing a sort of musical sort of trumpet thing.
Yeah.
And as he walked down, they were playing this and everyone was quiet, And then he got up onto the platform and a ray of sun just came right through and lit him up from the setting sun, like this. And everyone was going,
Oh, my God.
And it about 10 seconds, and he just stood there. The sun went, and then he carried on.
That's
and
interesting.
there's all this stuff that you don't believe.
Yeah.
But it's worth remembering.
So we've talked about charisma.
Yeah.
And I guess that is something that all of these people have. And to some degree is charisma. Unless there's anyone you've sat with and you've gone, I really don't get why everyone's so into this person. This is very, their energy is just completely the opposite of what I was expecting.
I can't sort of put my finger on anything. And some people, I think, are a lot more interesting than are made out by the press.
Right.
So I went to 10 Downing Street to do a sitting with John Major.
Right.
Which is just the time, it was a week or so before the first Gulf War, I think.
Right.
And, I've just found him a really interesting, lovely bloke. And yet all the papers were saying, I was this grey man. And then, as another example, Grace Jones.
Yeah.
We were doing a sitting with her and she was lovely.
Yeah.
We talked about her son and just really, when the press came in, she started getting all aggressive and, sort of like a completely different act.
Right, it goes into character.
Yeah.
Right.
And then some people take a lot of warming up, and when Lou Reed came for a sitting in New York.
That's so cool.
He was very off at the beginning. I had this quite a young woman who was going to sculpt him with me, someone I was training at the time. And, and she sort of got round him and he was just really nice. So there's a sort of, almost like an aloofness at first.
Yes.
And then people may warm up.
Right. Because he was part of Andy Warhol's little crew, wasn't he? And their whole concept of cool, I believe, was never be impressed by anything. Be absolutely neutral on everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I feel like that's probably a little bit of what you got there. But then at the same time, it's incredibly because I've seen some footage of you sizing up the I can't remember her name. It's the lady that was the ice skater. You had to go to LA to
forget her name as well.
to do it, and you're doing incredibly intimate measurements, aren't you? With very sort of pointy tools, and also just like it's incredibly intimate. So some people are either going to they're going to put the guard up, aren't they, and be incredibly uncomfortable, or I imagine what will happen more times than not is they will completely shred the ego away because of how intimate it is.
Yeah.
And you just get the real them.
Sometimes you have someone with you who might be... some people have very short attention spans. And so, I did sitting with Status Quo and, I had to tell jokes.
Right.
To try and keep Francis Rossi on together, really. And he told me jokes that I repeated once and the people nearly died. And, you have to sort of work a bit with them. And then sometimes you get someone who might be being a bit more chatty, who's keeping them a bit occupied while you're getting all the measurement stuff done and things like that.
Who's the most intense measurement you've done? Is it like I'm massive, you can see I'm massive. I don't know how you would size me up, but how long do people generally take the same time, or is it very much dependent on
sometimes if it's like Queens and things like that, you might only be getting an hour at a time. I did a lot for Holland, and they were really big on speed skating.
Right.
So I did 2 sculptures with full body sculptures and with the suits on and everything. Everything has to cut in the right way because they're skin tight suits. They would take about 3 hours, really tough, because they might be standing there with their legs crossed going around a corner. And I put them on a board like that to get the angle. So, and the measurements, there's a lot to do.
Yeah.
And I love doing those with the figures and stuff like that.
Right.
I did a sculpture for our Olympics, the London Olympics, of Olga Korbut, who was a gymnast, as she was when she was about 16.
Oh, is this one when she's got her she's hyper, what's the word? Hyper...
Well, she's standing on her hands and then doing the splits.
Right. Is this the one where her legs are down by her, like over her head?
No.
No,
this is she's looking ahead like that.
Oh, okay.
And doing the splits.
Yeah.
So I had to get the general manager's daughter, who was 14 and was a gymnast.
Stroke a luck.
And she did a sit-in standing on her hands.
Right.
But I had all people around. And we did Darcy Bustle, and that was a sort of arabesque, I think. And that was really, you have to just take stuff, 4 photographs at once.
Yeah.
But doing Jonah Lomu was the same. We had great big turntable, 4 cameras, so you catch the action just right.
Right. Who's the biggest? You ever done did you do like Andre the Giant or I know there's an Arnold Schwarzenegger one.
He's not that big though.
Well, Arnie.
Yeah.
He's not very tall, I doubt,
No.
but he's probably quite.
Yeah, we haven't done a sit-in with him because we have an attraction in Holland.
Yeah.
I've even brought my steps with me because we could not reach the top of anyone's head there.
You saying you've literally brought your steps with you today?
Yeah.
Really?
Well, some little steps. That's a bit of a joke.
Well, I didn't know we were doing a sitting. I would have worn some other clothes, Steve. I was waiting for you to ask, I've got to say.
But Holland, I mean, there's some big people there.
Right.
And I was living in Newmarket, so I was quite big. And then you go to Holland and you realise you're not.
You're not that big. Yeah, no, yeah, yeah. That's I don't know if I've been anywhere where I've felt like of a regular size.
Really? Well,
No,
yeah.
America was but then no, I didn't meet any really particularly vertically big people in America.
The Swedish, people with Swedish genes
Right.
can be quite big in America, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know where my heritage is. It's probably Roman or Viking, I imagine. Maybe none. Maybe I'm just...
Roman?
Potentially. I don't know. It's not like my family are all giants. I'm the only giant.
Right.
Well, I say giant.
I just got back my ancestral thing.
Ah, interesting. I thought about doing this. What did you come back with?
Well, I thought I was an eighth Irish.
Right.
Because my wife's Irish and an eighth English.
Okay.
And they didn't mention Ireland whatsoever. But a lot of my dad was taller than me, which is, I'm the only person I know shorter than their dad. But he had blonde hair, very light blue eyes.
Right.
Reddish blonde. And he always said he looked like a Saxon. And it came back as Sweden, Norway, North Germany, Scotland, tiny Scotland, little bit of Wales. Mostly East Anglia, because my mum's family originally came there. My dad's family came from there as well.
Right.
But they're sort of Londoners for a few generations. But it's absolutely fascinating to me. But I've also wanted to be a Neanderthal. But my legs are too thin.
So I guess you mentioned earlier, sometimes when you get nervous, you resort to this sort of 8-year-old Cockney accent. Maybe that's a good part to maybe discuss how you got into this world, because being the principal sculptor and technical director of Madame Tussauds isn't how many people have got that on their CV in the world?
Not a lot.
2, 3, maybe. So how do you end up in this position, and what is it that makes you want to replicate other people? I know that sounds a bit deep, but if you've got a deep answer for it, go for it. But it might just be that it's something you fell into and it was pretty cool, and that there's no other art like it, really, is there?
No. Mrs. Thatcher came to I don't know if it's to unveil a sculpture, but she was looking around the studio.
Yeah.
And she was talking to me and looking at some pictures that I was working on and things. And she said, of course, you're the real artists, not like all this other rubbish you get. And you know where you don't know what to say?
Right.
Like we're probably the proper artists because we make money and it looks like what we're trying to do, but no one else can make, Picasso, he didn't make them look like it.
Yeah.
I really, it is a very strange thing.
Right.
And when I moved to Swindon when I was 8,
yeah,
in the middle of a council estate they were still building, and I used to go and dig in the foundations and get clay and just make little heads and things.
Right.
And I painted them and everything.
Wow.
So I let the clay dry and painted them. And so I've always been quite interested in that. The school I went to after the third year, which I forget, that's about 13-ish,
yeah,
we didn't have any art lessons because I failed me 11 plus and went to a school with no playing fields and
right.
no...
So were you an academic kid, or did you not do very well with the academic stuff?
I failed me 11 plus.
Right.
Which, and I didn't get to grammar school, and all the kids from the private estate went to the grammar school, and I didn't know that they had private tutors and all that sort of thing. Yeah. I was very upset about it. But then when I was about 14-ish, 15, I went to Saturday morning art classes in the local art college.
Yeah.
Then I went to Marlborough College as a sociological experiment.
You're an experiment.
There were boys, just for the sixth form. And we went for it was 2 years. And I think there were 18 of us, people from Malmesbury, Swindon, around the place.
Been to Marlborough. It's a very nice place.
It's lovely. Have you
Very
been to the
nice.
college?
I haven't. No, I haven't.
It's very beautiful. So from my secondary modern in the middle of Swindon with the toilets down the bottom of the playground and no playing fields within 2 miles.
Right.
To go to somewhere with playing fields that were 2 miles. And the best sort of art, probably best art department in the country, in the school, I imagine.
Right.
It was a very amazing place.
Did you have any teachers there, or were they lecturers at that point that you feel have a particular hand in encouraging you or letting you know that maybe you were a talented guy?
Yeah, it was strange in a sense that the art teachers were amazing.
Right.
And really positive and taught really well. I feel that I had a better maths teacher. I did A-level maths and failed. I had a better maths teacher in my secondary modern, and he gave me a real interest in maths that I had, as a technical director, I had to use to work out proportions and, experiments and things that I did. The English teacher was brilliant in my secondary modern. Who's the bloke who wrote Nights in White Satin? Justin Hayward's dad.
Is that a Moody Blues song?
Yeah.
I don't know, actually.
Yeah, it's Justin Hayward.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. His dad was my English teacher in secondary modern, and he was so strict, but he was brilliant. And where you've got all these different influences that affect your life.
Yeah.
But at the time, I wasn't thinking, I really need this trigonometry and algebra. It was only later that it became important.
Yeah, that is strange. How were your parents with this sort of stuff? Were they thrilled that you were sort of, because it was a step up, I guess, to go to Marlborough College, wasn't it?
Well,
as an even if it was even as an experiment.
It was very difficult because I was brought up as a Jehovah's Witness. Right. So my dad wasn't a Jehovah's Witness and my mum was. So to some extent, I was expected to become a full-time minister. And again, massive education, studying history and Bible and things, being a Jehovah's Witness. And it made me quite nervous meeting people because I had to go around the doors and things. When I went to the college, we had a great big chapel with all, I think there were Burne-Jones murals on the wall and things. And we had to all turn towards the altar. And I refused to turn for some reason. And then everything got difficult, not closing my eyes during prayers. And I sort of got into trouble quite a bit.
How old were you at this point?
About 16, 17.
Oh, see, you're in classic rebellious mode, aren't you?
And I sort of talked my mum into going to follow art because the Jehovah's Witnesses magazines, Watchtown They're Awake, had these really strange illustrations in them. And I said, I'd love to work on those, all that stuff. But it's great for when I go around art galleries and looking at paintings and, so much religious stuff.
Yeah.
And I even the Catholic stuff as well. I just knew so much about all this. And it was great. I wouldn't be me without it, but I'd probably be a lot more relaxed me.
So how do you end up at Tussauds?
I went back to Swindon for a year to do a foundation course and then went to Birmingham Art College. I arrived on the Friday. I had to start college on the Sunday, but I arrived on the Friday. My mate came with me who loved folk music and things, and on Saturday night, we went out and looked for a folk club, and we went into this Irish folk club, and the woman on the door let us in free because my mate said he would play.
Right.
But that's Imelda, who I'm married to now. So I met her the day after I arrived in Birmingham and hadn't even started college yet. And then we had Sarah quite young, and then our son Jude 18 months later. So I hadn't finished college by the time I had
Two kids. Wow.
No money. So I went into teaching.
Were you the classic sort of artist with no money?
Well, I was for a long time.
We've all been there.
Yeah. So I did 3 years, so a year in Swindon, and then 3 years in Birmingham, and then a year as a postgraduate teaching diploma degree thing. And then I taught 2 years art in Birmingham in a school. And then I went to Bottisham Village College in Cambridgeshire, which is like a comprehensive school up to 16. And it was the first year it was comprehensive. And I was officially known as the pottery teacher.
Not a bad job.
No, I wasn't very good at pottery.
Was it all coming out of the kiln broken?
Occasionally.
Yeah.
But I taught mostly sculpture and painting and drawing. And then I was there for 11 years, and one of the teachers brought in this advert on the Educational Times supplement or something, said portrait sculptors in the London area, freelance, like to apply for Madame Tussauds. And then, so I wasn't any of those things.
Right.
I didn't do portraits, I did figures,
Right.
I was interested in bodies and stuff.
And so you winged it.
So I went there and got the job. 1985, that was in the summer of 85.
And what was, if say we went to a time machine, we stroll into Madame Tussauds, or Tussauds, however we want to call it, in 1985, the day you get the job, who's in there? What does it look like? Wham?
No,
the
I think it
Beatles?
was...
Boy George?
Boy George was being done when I arrived.
Right.
Dolly Parton had just been done. There's a funny story. There was a sculpture of... There were lots of kings and queens of all over Europe. And the Queen of Denmark, Margarita II, was there, as a figure. Mm. And it was very formal.
Right.
It was a very different place.
Right.
And they wanted me to go to a sitting in Denmark with the Queen to do another sculpture.
Right.
And I didn't know much about her, because as an Englishman, it's only one Queen. The Queen.
The Queen, yeah.
Yeah, and I didn't have good research. I made a fuss about it, but I didn't have good research. Anyway, I was waiting there, and she used to cycle. The Queen used to cycle, and she was a bit late.
Right.
And the other sculptor I was working with was waiting outside to meet her, and I heard she was going to be late. And then she came in like this. And I looked at her, and I thought, I heard she was tall, which, she was. But she didn't look anything like the sculpture that was in Madame Tussauds. And I thought, must be terrible. Anyway, I was talking to her, and I explained this, Your Majesty this, and Your Majesty that. And she said, I'm not the Queen, I'm the lady in waiting. That sort of absolute embarrassment.
Right.
And then I just thought, oh no. Do you know where you put your foot in something and then everything gets worse? And then suddenly the door opened from the other side and the Queen walked in, and I recognised her then.
Right.
It was quite obvious. And she put her hand out like that. I was so relieved. I went like that, heard this cracking sound of her fingers. She didn't flinch.
I bet she didn't. No, that's part of their thing, isn't it? They're trained, like they've got all this like training, haven't they, to be like, you know, take the handshake, look them in the eye, you know, all this like, it's all like posture, isn't it? And strength and power. And she was probably screaming inside.
And she's an artist as well, you know, a designer. I thought, I hope I haven't ruined your career, you know. Got fingers all.
That's hilarious.
Oh,
how did that sculpture come out?
Well, I didn't do it. The other sculptor did that.
Right.
Oh, it was a lot better.
So I guess we should talk about our Queen, Queen Lizzie.
Yeah.
You did a stunning. Was that one of the last ones you did?
No, I did. I'd done a sitting for another sculptor with another sculptor when I first started, really.
Right.
In Buckingham Palace.
Yeah.
But then they wanted a new one, and it was for a jubilee or something. And so we did another sitting in Windsor Castle, and that was...
which is the better gaff, Windsor or Buckingham Palace?
Well, I preferred Windsor because the soldiers on the door saluted me with their guns as I went past, you know, did all that sort of... at ease, you know, at ease, private.
As you were. Power, that's power.
And looking out the window, you know, and looking up the big Royal Mile or whatever it is, you know, the Windsor thing. It was interesting. I made a few gaffes in that as well.
Did you?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I guess you're going to have to tell me about these, aren't you? What have you done?
Well, before...
Didn't you get attacked by the corgis or something?
Oh, no, I nearly trod on a corgi, but that was in Balmoral when I took the clay up to Scotland in the library. And she came in with a headscarf and a big tweed dress on. And, you know, she'd just been walking on the hills in Balmoral. She's so professional.
I bet.
You know, it's unbelievable.
I wonder if she is like, I use the word friends loosely, but I wonder how close she is with other queens around. I mean, because there's probably hundreds of queens in the world from varying degrees. And as we've sort of jokingly said, you know, Queen Elizabeth, what's she, the second?
Yeah.
Is the queen, I think, isn't she?
From when I was, you know, when I was 4, we had a party in the street for a coronation.
But I suspect the only people on the planet that really had an existence that she can relate to are people like maybe the Queen of Denmark or other similar queens. Do you think they have a bond that they can understand things? Because it's a very singular existence, isn't it, for her?
I think like the Danish Queen and the Dutch Queen, Beatrix, I think they're much more relaxed.
Right.
I think the countries are more relaxed in a sense and have a slightly less in awe feeling about the royal family. They just really like the royal family very often, you know, probably not everyone.
Right. But they're more royalists, would you say, than we are here now? Because the royal family have fans.
Yeah.
I mean, my grandmother, she's got a cabinet full of royal memorabilia.
Yeah.
I don't really get it. But then, you know, she's a World War II evacuee. And I think during times like that, royal families and things like that meant more. They probably had more of an active role of some regard. So, for me, I don't really get that sort of thing. But people love them.
Yeah, I was brought up to not have particular respect for politicians, royal family, anything like that.
Yeah.
And so when I went first time to Buckingham Palace, I thought I won't be in awe of this person.
Yeah.
Because, you know, she's only got there because of her dad or, you know, granddad or whatever. Whereas when I met Mrs. Thatcher, I didn't like her politics, but you had to respect someone who got to where she was.
Yeah.
And really did earn your respect, my respect, because of how she got there.
Yeah.
But when I met the Queen and she put her hand out and I went to speak and I couldn't speak. It
Really?
just caught my throat. Yeah, it was...
Some little noise come out.
Yeah. And it's just because, for years, you've seen coins, this, that and the other.
Yeah.
And...
I mean, how could you not be?
And I did get a bit nervous in one sitting where I wanted the Queen to smile a bit but not show her teeth, so, and where you're trying to coax an expression out of someone.
Yeah.
And I said, Your Majesty, would you close your mouth?
Right.
Like that. Because I could, I could see the teeth going.
Yeah.
And then rather than just leaving it,
Yeah.
I just said, I bet not many people say that to you, do they? And then I sort of wished that I hadn't said it.
Right.
And so you go, oh, no.
That's quite funny. Because a lot of these things you have to remember is that, they are human as well.
Yeah.
Even if she is on the £10 note. Do you know what I mean? And on the coins and your granny's cutlery and whatnot.
She did smile a bit when I said that, but it just made me completely nervous.
Well, because you took a risk.
Yeah, but
the Queen
trouble
of
is with
England.
me, I don't think before I say something.
Right.
If I think something slightly funny, I say it, and then afterwards I think,
Deal with it later.
Maybe I shouldn't have said that.
Yeah.
I did another thing, which just straight after that.
Yeah.
Before we went, we do photographs from above and below and all that, up someone's nose, down from the top, every angle. And I said to the photographer, because he normally climbs over people's chairs and things, I said, you can't climb over the Chippendales at Windsor Castle. You better get some steps.
Right.
And he came in back to the studio that morning with with this trolley. It was a sack barrow. He said, look, you go like that and it's steps. I can put all my camera equipment, take it all, all this sort of thing. And I looked, said, oh, that's brilliant. But after I'd said this, shut your mouth, I looked down and saw these steps there.
Yeah.
And I said to the Queen, I said, see those steps? They're only 11 quid from home base. And she went, ooh. And then I said, you couldn't even get the materials for that.
That's like when you're in a restaurant, isn't it? You have a Sunday roast and you go, this is great. Couldn't make it for cheaper than this. That's bloody great.
And I just, when afterwards we had a sort of debrief and the photographer said, I'm sure she wasn't interested in how much my steps cost. He said, but when you said about 11 quid, and then he said, oh, what's a quid? Is it that little round thing with my head on?
That's hilarious. Do you think she knows? She knows a lot more than she lets on, probably.
Oh,
she's sharp, I think, from what I've
Can
heard.
you imagine her? She's amazing. The control, the difficulties that she's had, family and things. I do respect her an awful lot more now, I must say.
Yeah, sometimes all it takes is actually kind of, being in the presence of some people to sort of dispel the myth, the rumour and the bullshit. Do you feel that I guess you probably don't trust the media at all because you've seen the way all these people are portrayed and then you've had to go and, get so close to them you can smell their ears. Do you know what I mean?
I did a sculpture of Kylie Minogue when she was 18 or something.
Yeah.
And it was in the paper, and we had, I had a clay, you do it sort of as a nude figure really,
right.
And I wrapped a cloth round it, and then this bloke from, I think it was Daily Star or something.
Some trash.
Yeah, and he was going, go on, show us her raspberries. And all that. You get the front page and, there's all this,
Yeah.
and you hear all the clamour, like when Michael Jackson's there or something, all this clamour.
Yeah.
But you also get the feel that they have an agenda before they even start.
Oh, I bet. Yeah. They know what they know what their narrative is going to be.
Yeah.
Or they know what they can spin. I'm sure.
And we had sort of PR training and things eventually after making some real gaffes.
Right. And they say, like, this is how you talk to the media. Sit down and listen.
Don't tell them anything.
Yeah.
And when I talked about the Dalai Lama, and the thing about charisma and stuff,
Yeah.
that when he came to Madame Tussauds for the unveiling,
Yeah.
and there was a lot of press interest, and the sculptor who I'd gone up with, who did the sculpture, press was talking to him, and this woman said to him, "Do you feel that you've captured the essence of the Dalai Lama?" And the PR woman was there, and the sculptor said, well, this man is considered a living god. I don't believe that I could in any way portray that essence.
Yeah.
And the PR woman said, "Stop, cut that out. You're not allowed to say that we haven't captured."
Oh, his essence. Right.
And,
But what he was talking about was something far deeper.
Yeah.
Which wouldn't have been, it wouldn't have translated into the Daily Mail or something, would it?
Yeah, and it was, I suppose they could have said, the sculptor didn't think it was like him, or, it wouldn't. But, what's the sculptor going to say? Yes, I've created this, living God.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? So with your religious background, now this is strange. Might be a bit of a strange question. What's your opinion on worshipping false idols? Where are you going, heaven or hell?
Well, my mum bought all my life drawings off me and burnt them because she thought they were possessed. I don't know. When I did the China Fuji, my mum was really upset about it because she said they have different things. They have strength, they have spirit. And she said, well, he's using his spirit or something. So that's like demonic.
Right.
And also she got upset when I did Desmond Tutu.
Right.
Because it's from the devil,
Yeah.
Different religion.
Oh, wow. So she was pretty hardcore then.
Oh, yeah.
And do you think that spurned you on, because you're known as the Millimetre Man, aren't you?
Yeah.
Which means, my understanding is that if you have, let's say you've got Sylvester Stallone coming to unveil his Rambo thing or whatever, right? If he pulls that sheet off, or they unveil that statue and it's an inch taller than him, or he's taller than the statue, the illusion is shattered, isn't it?
Yeah.
All the magic is gone, isn't it? Because it's all, the whole power of it is in the detail, isn't it?
Yeah. If someone's standing next to it, it really shows.
Yeah.
And we were quite sloppy at measurements when I first went there. And that's how I got the name Millimetre Man. But millimetres are sloppy. I prefer Micron Man.
So my question is basically, there's a lot of pride that goes into what you do.
Yeah.
You take it seriously.
Yeah.
You do an insane job. Is there a part of you that's that efficient and that dedicated to it because that possibly you think this will be the one that my mum gets it?
No. I didn't.
Or did you just give up on that and just be like, she's never going to get it, I'm just doing my thing now?
Yeah. I didn't worry about that, After 1975 and Armageddon didn't come, I sort of
right.
got a bit more relaxed.
Yeah.
Talking of measurements,
yeah,
like when I went there, they didn't get that iris size was important. Do you know that someone held a bit of card up with a hole in it and went like this?
Right.
And
Iris in the eye.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I argued over 1/4 millimetre in the diameter of an iris.
Right.
Because it changes so much the look of a face.
Right.
If someone has big irises, you know, that could be up to about 13 millimetres. So like David Cameron or something was 13 millimetres. That's a really big iris. But a small one would be about 11, you know, so...
so that really does matter.
It was important, you know, to get eye width right, you know, all that sort of thing. Get the skull right. So, yeah, I was called Millimetre Man and probably annoyed a lot of people.
Well, you know, that's the difference, isn't it, between creating something truly great and just, you know, creating an attraction.
You know, if you're doing a sculpture of someone in bronze or something, you're doing something else.
Yeah.
You know, the idea of the Madame Tussauds really is that someone could stand next to someone, maybe have their photograph taken, and it sort of gives the illusion. That, you know, they might have done that. I've had some exciting sittings. Robin Williams was probably one of the best.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah.
What was he like? What was his energy like?
Amazing.
Yeah.
He had a PR woman or his assistant or something. It was an old lady as miserable as sin. And I can see why he needed someone like that.
Right.
You know. But
because you'd think, why would someone like him have choose to be around someone like that?
Yeah.
And it's, you know, there's a lot of great relationships that work.
It might be a sort of filter.
Off of yin and yang. Yeah.
And it was just hilarious, you know, doing the sitting with him. Because often comedians are not funny when they're not working.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
But he was, and I said something, he was in his underpants.
Right.
And he had this sort of cockerel on him.
Right.
I said something about flying tiger, hidden cockerel, or, you know.
Crouching tiger. Yeah.
And he just went off on one.
Right.
You know, and it was brilliant.
His improv was incredible, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. What year was that?
I'm not very good at that stuff. That was in San Francisco. We did that. That would be about...
Pre or post Jumanji?
I don't know.
Pre-Flubber?
I don't know. Probably nearer the Vietnam. No, I don't know. I know Hidden Dragon Flying Tiger had just come out. It's about as...
So that might be 90... Is that what? Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon?
Yeah, that's him.
The martial arts masterpiece.
Yeah.
I don't know what... I think that's a late 90s.
Yeah.
I think that's a late 90s film.
Yeah.
Could have been a post Mrs. Doubtfire then. Because his sort of
I think it was after Mrs. Doubtfire.
Right.
It might have been the time he did that one of the photographer.
Oh, 1 hour photo.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I've talked about this previously on the pod with someone else. That is my favourite Robin Williams film.
It is amazing.
Only because I don't feel like, maybe I'm wrong now because it's come up twice, but I just don't feel it gets the props it deserves from serious film fans, because that performance he puts in is remarkable.
Well, from a man that's so sort of jolly, that sinister feeling you got from him.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, that had a lot of depth to it, I thought, that film.
Yeah.
And it is I didn't really like Robin Williams films that much.
Right.
But that one really, I thought, was his best. But that's, you know, like what I like.
Yeah. So I guess, have you ever had like a sitting where, you know, you've done the thing, you've done the sizing, and then they come for the unveiling, and they have changed, because it's about 6 months, isn't there, between?
Yeah.
And you go, oh, he's like bulked up, not necessarily put on weight, but maybe like bulked up for a role in a film, or lost weight.
Yeah. When I first started, we used to get them to donate clothes and things.
Right.
And, because there'd be a lot of men in suits and things. And because I always donated something that they'd grown out of 10 years before, and so you sculpted it, then you try and fit these
these things on.
Things, yeah.
Someone like Christian Bale, I don't know if you've done Christian Bale, he's very well known for going up and down in weight for roles. And at any point, and some of the guys from the Avengers as well, the guy who does Thor and things like that.
Robert De Niro went up and down, didn't he?
Yeah.
I was supposed to be sculpting Christian Bale at one stage, but it never happened. I don't think he was considered famous enough.
He definitely is now, isn't he?
Yeah.
So you've got there's like a Terminator there. There's a Shrek I saw.
Yeah.
I don't know if these things came in after your time, but were you just working on the lifelike stuff?
I was mostly, but there's another sculptor. A few of them came via films and via spitting image and things like that. And were very, very good sculptors. And there's one chap who Shrek was done in the studio where I was working.
Yeah.
In pieces.
Right.
So the sculptor made a model and then they cut it up and then did like the slices and then blew those up.
Right.
And then it all had to fit together.
Right.
It was brilliant. I couldn't have done that. Do you know where you sort of think that took a very special person to be able to do all that? And it's, it was a lot lower than here. So it wasn't easy
in a
at all.
pokey space.
Yeah.
Interesting.
He was an amazing sculptor, this bloke, as well.
So one thing I wanted to touch upon was how many originals that were made by Madame Tussauds herself remain? Yeah,
there's quite a few of the royal family.
Right.
The other royal family, that's Louis XVI.
Right.
Marie Antoinette.
Yes, because she's apparently, she had the guillotine blade that cut off Marie Antoinette's head, apparently. She owned that, which is quite morbid,
well, that was down in the Chamber of Horrors.
Right.
And it had got burnt in a fire.
Oh.
But what you've got to remember that Madame Tussauds was a great publicist.
Yes. She was almost like the very earliest example of a PR agent that I can think of.
Yeah. And
very
she, for a businesswoman, left her husband in France, took one of her sons, came to England, and I think she had the carriage that they tried to escape in, the royal family. Mm. She did, Robespierre and lots of those, but also Voltaire. What's that American's name with a big forehead? I think he did the experiments with the key on the kite. Benjamin Franklin.
Oh, Franklin, yeah.
Yeah, she did him. Some of them were quite good.
Right.
But she wasn't, in my opinion, an amazing sculptor.
Right.
But that's only my opinion.
Yeah, yeah.
And she didn't have, 300 photographs.
Exactly, right.
Taken from up someone's nose and down the top and underneath and looking at film.
Yeah.
When you're sculpting someone, you watch film, see how they move, all that sort of stuff. She was taught by her adopted uncle.
Yeah.
Her uncle was Dr. Curtius, and he did a sculpture of Madame du Barry.
Right.
And that's the oldest one that was in the attraction, the Sleeping Beauty.
Oh, that one breathes, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
How does that work? Is it some sort of clockwork?
Well, it was clockwork. I had to resculpt the body and things on that. One of the first jobs I did. Very difficult to make someone breathe when they've got a corset on really tight, because then you just get the breathing here, but then that's the wax was there, so that wouldn't happen. So think that she was mistress of, I think, Louis XV, I think. And that's the only Dr. Curtis one that's left.
Right.
But sorry,
No, it's cool because it's it's old, it's history, isn't it? And it's like, it's not always the easiest to recall, especially when you've had a life of redefining what that place is yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, she's the initial seed, I guess. She I feel like, you took the baton and ran with it to a degree.
And it was really good fun. I really did enjoy it. I love teaching as well.
Right.
So I was sorry when I left that, but I did nearly all the new sculptors that came.
Yeah.
It was my job to sort of teach them a lot. So I did that over the years.
Right.
And then they let me go to Wimbledon Art College, to the university, for a term.
Yeah.
And I taught portrait sculpture to the second-year degree course.
Did you poach any of them for Tussauds?
We have over the years, yeah.
That's amazing.
In fact, there's an art lecturer called Alan Sly, who probably, I'd say, of 40-odd sculptors I've come across, it wouldn't surprise me if he's taught 30 of them. And he taught at Wimbledon and City and Guilds before that.
Yeah.
But it was so interesting because every year I went to the Royal College of Art we gave a prize.
Yeah.
And looking round at all their stuff. Did that for years. It was just, I was so lucky, to go to all these places and have a very full life after teaching.
Yeah. That's amazing. What I'm fascinated in as well is the chamber. Is it the Chamber of Horrors?
Yeah.
Your Chamber of Horrors. What's in there? I know that there's a bunch of heads because Madame Tussauds had to sculpt the decapitated heads of French aristocrats in the Revolution, right? And that was one of her earliest
she
forays in sculpting.
And she did life casts of the faces from the heads. So she's supposed to have gone to the is it the Madeleine, the church, and and got the heads.
That's grim.
Yeah.
Is there any literature where she says, I didn't want to do this? Or was she...
Well, she also said she was one of the next in line to be executed and all because of her association with the royal family, but there's no real records of her. She said that she taught the king's sister, I think it was, in the Petit Trianon.
Right.
But there's no records of that. So
I see.
It could have, a lot of it.
It's probably a bit like, well, I have a use here and a reason to be kept alive.
Yeah.
And this is grim work, but as long as I'm proving useful for something, they have no reason to kill me, I guess. It must have been quite traumatic.
That's her story.
Right.
I don't know.
Right. It's a good story. We're sticking to it. So who's in the Chamber of Horrors? Have you got notorious serial killers?
Yeah.
Or are they like Hollywood bogeymen?
There is quite a bit about the French Revolution, the guillotine, Madame Tussauds or Marie Grossholz, as she was at that time, going around looking for the heads and mould, Well, last time I went, there was a sort of quite a frightening bit you go through where people leap out at you and things. There was, Christie, he was being hung.
Was he the last man to be hung in Britain?
No, Christie was, have you heard of 10 Remington Place, the film?
I haven't, no.
They did another remake of it recently.
Right.
And Evans, who lived downstairs, got hung for the murder of his wife.
Right.
And it wasn't him at all. It was Christie who lived upstairs.
Right.
Timothy Evans wasn't very bright.
So he pinned it on him because he couldn't.
Yeah.
That's evil.
And Nielsen was there, who lived round the corner from where I lived in
Leslie
Cricklewood.
Nielsen?
No, Dennis.
Oh, who's Leslie Nielsen?
He was an actor who was in in that aircraft, wasn't he?
That's right. That's from Naked Gun. Oh, he's probably in there anyway, isn't he?
Right. I don't know.
From Airplane and Naked Gun, yeah. Harry cut that. Dennis Nielsen, the notorious British serial killer.
And the funny thing is, I don't want to say anything bad about the sculptures when I went, but Doctor Who.
Which Doctor is this now?
One before last. Scottish.
Oh, yeah, from the fella from the thick of it.
No, not him.
No?
No.
What, David Tennant?
David Tennant. Okay, I'll start. David Tennant did Dennis Nielsen thing called Des the other week.
That's right, yeah.
Brilliant. And I saw him and I said to my wife, I said, he can't look like Nielsen. He's just so different.
Yeah.
Because I saw Nielsen every morning down there, in the waxwork. And when I saw the photographs of Nielsen, David Tennant was much more like him than the waxwork was. But we had this sort of all these bits and pieces there, where he boiled heads and stuff.
Yeah, he'd boil the heads so that he could peel the skin off.
Yeah.
The skulls easier, I think. And then he'd flush it all down the toilet or something.
Yeah, and block the drains and then complained about the smell.
Right.
I was going to take this tin, this big boiling thing home and get people round and have spaghetti bolognese and then afterwards telling I boiled the spaghetti.
Yeah, I borrowed that one from Dennis Nielsen. We've had a good old chat here. There's still a couple of things I want to ask you. That is, I guess you get asked this all the time. It's going to be the most cliche question you're ever going to hear. This won't be the first, won't be the last time you hear it. Who would you like to sculpt that you haven't sculpted, alive or dead?
Right.
Who would have been an absolute pleasure alive, who is unfortunately dead?
It might not be pleasurable.
Right.
But I think I wouldn't have minded sculpting John Lennon.
Yeah.
Helen Mirren I would have liked to have sculpted, but someone else, this bloke I said was brilliant at work. He sculpted her.
What is it about Helen Mirren that you...
What I think is that she's not conventionally attractive.
Right.
That I've done sittings with like Miss World or,
Beyonce.
Yeah. Beyonce's lovely, you know, very
That's another
attractive.
thing. You have done sittings with what many in the world believe to be the most beautiful women alive.
Yeah, I mean, I did some sitting with someone called Aishwarya Rai, who was, an Indian actress. Who was, I think she was Miss World, and absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
There's something different in some people, There's a beauty that is more of an inner beauty, I suppose. More interesting.
Right.
In that way.
Like a mystique.
I would have loved to have sculpted Nijinsky, the Russian ballet dancer who died. Right. I don't know. I think he did his last performance about 1917 or something. Oh. So I missed out on that one. Yeah. And I lived in Newmarket and they were going on about Nijinsky all the time, but that was the horse.
Right. So John Lennon, Helen Mirren.
Nijinsky. We did a sculpture of Leonardo da Vinci at work, and I worked with the sculptor. A principal sculptor often worked with someone, and talked about what they were doing. Yeah. And that was really exciting, that he did this amazing job from very little work, very little information. Yeah. I was often at my best, I feel, doing sculptures when there wasn't much information because you're using all your knowledge. Yeah.
30 years as a principal sculptor, I think we should start an online petition to have your sculpture in Madame Tussauds.
I'm in a few. I'm in Warwick Castle
Yeah.
as a Welsh bowman doing arm wrestling,
Right.
and I'm being beaten,
Yeah.
and it nearly killed me doing the sitting for this. Difficult to recognise.
Yeah.
And then I'm in Holland, where I was, in Amsterdam, as a drunken sailor picking up a prostitute.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you're always
Sort of
used as an
16
extra.
Yeah, 1660s, the golden age
Right.
in Holland.
Wow. So how do I become some sort of Madame Tussauds extra then? I wouldn't mind doing that. A bit of that. I'm not famous enough to be in there.
I used Mel as a model for, I did a Vermeer painting, just a little one called I think it's either called The Love Letter or The Girl with a Cittern or something.
Right.
And I worked on this, so I used Mel as the model for the woman, and then her servant giving her this note was Sarah, my daughter.
Yeah.
And so I used them, and we used people's hands a lot because we live casted hands mostly. I'm probably about 30 odd different hands around the place.
Amazing. So you're in there. You are in there.
Yeah.
That'd be great. Thank you so much to this week's guest, Steve Swales. If you want to check out some of his work, we will leave some links to various bits and bobs from Madame Tussauds in the show notes descriptions. I want to take a minute to thank his daughter, Sarah Swales, for hooking this up and putting me in contact with him. We are also going to put some links to her work, her photography work, in the show notes descriptions as well as a little thank you. So please go and check that out as well and support her stuff. What else have we got to talk about? Yes, leave us a review, subscribe. If you enjoyed this, please tell a friend. If you want to follow us on social media, it's at The Giant Pod on Instagram and on Twitter. If you want my Instagram, it's at Andy_S1S. You can follow all the other bits I'm doing in life there. This was produced by the absolute statuesque Harry Williams. Thanks so much for listening to this week's episode of The Giant Pod. I had so much fun making it. We will see you next week again on The Giant Pod.